Hi everyone, it's your favourite Atomic Blonde here. Sorry it's not a live show this week. After a very enjoyable day yesterday out and a very late night. And despite England being absolutely thrashed in the rugby, I did have a very good day and evening. But as you can see from the bags, I'm a little bit tired. The Wi-Fi's being iffy. I'm tired. Just didn't feel a good combo to do a live show this week, but I will be back next week. I'm sure it'd make for great viewing, watching me stumble through this and trying to remember words and sentences coherently. But for your enjoyment, I thought let's go for recording, and I can just any particularly blonde moments from me this week. So let's get into it. What's been going on this week? What have I been watching? What's the news? So, as ever, let's start with the Last of Us. As you know, last few weeks, I've pretty much lost interest in this show. The last couple of episodes have been so boring, just really not for me. I guess they're trying to, as I previously said, try and make themselves look different to The Walking Dead and other sort of zombie type shows. So, there's just actually not really any zombies or clickers or whatever you want to call it in the show about that. I think we've had 2 episodes with them in, maybe 3 out of the 8 episodes. So, very strange decisions going on there. So this week's episode, obviously we've had Joel, who is badly injured. Ellie's looking after him. She stitched him up, but he's now got a fever. He's got an infection from the wound. Understandably, she just stitched him up with a needle and thread. They've run out of provisions, so Ellie goes out to try and find some food. She sees a deer and shoots it, but not a clean. Well, doesn't sort of shoot for the head or anything, so it manages to get away, but eventually sort of kills over and dies. So Ellie goes after it, obviously. But we also just introduced this new town where we kind of got a preacher looking after a group of people. They're talking about how they're running out of food, but God will provide, all that kind of stuff. So the preacher and his sort of right-hand man go out and come across the body of the deer. They sort of look around, can't see anybody, so they go to take it, but there's obviously the person who shot it must be around here somewhere. And as they go to take it, Ellie arrives and there's a bit of a standoff. And she agrees to give them sort of, half the deer or some meat off the deer if in exchange for some medicine for Joel. She's making out that she's with a group of people as well, so she's trying to protect herself. And all this kind of unravels. And the group of people are the people that attacked Joel in the last episode. And obviously, he killed one of them, protecting himself and Ellie. All this kind of unravels. We find out that basically the preacher's a bit of a pedo. He's got a thing for Ellie. But then we also find out that where they've been talking about food shortages and they're running out of venison and rabbit and things like that, because it's particularly harsh winter, we soon discover that actually they've been eating people. Most of the people in the town don't know that they're eating people. Ellie catches onto this because she ends up she tries to lead them away from the house where Joel is because he's still she's been injecting him with antibiotics. Big episode for old Pedro, just sort of laying in a bed, sweating a lot. So she takes the horse and tries to lead them away. When the guy shoots the horse, she falls off. Then she wakes up, she's like in a cage. And while she's in this cage, she sees there's an ear on the floor as the guy passes her some food. So she kind of knocks it everywhere. And he's like, well, FYI, that was actually just deer. But so this kind of ensues. This is where we sort of find out that the preacher's got a bit of a perv eye for Ellie. God knows why, but. And and he's sort of trying to talk around and groom her basically, and she ends up breaking his fingers, so he sort of slams her into the cage, and then basically decides that she's too feisty and he's going to chop her up and eat her after all. He goes off, gets some guys to come back. They kind of pick her up and slap her on the chopping block, because this is a converted old steakhouse, so it's literally a big like chopping block, and she's freaking out. And then she just blurts out that they can't kill her because she's infected, and she'd just bitten the preacher dude, so he's now infected. And they're like, oh, she's lying. They look at her arm, and obviously they're old wounds. They're like, well, she'll return by now. This gives Ellie enough time to grab hold of the meat cleaver and chops one of them and runs away, and then into the restaurant, and the preacher comes after her. And it's like a bit of running around in the restaurant, and he manages to get hold of her. She stabs him. He's then basically got her pinned down on the floor, and he's like going to sexually assault her. But she manages to sort of reach out, get the meat cleaver, and basically just hacks him up. A bit overkill. I guess she was sort of scared and frightened, but geez, right, psycho. While all this has been happening, there's been a house-to-house search. Joel's managed to wake up. Eddie left him with a knife and told him, like, if anybody comes down, kill them. So he kills them. Captures a couple of them, tortures them. They give away where Ellie's been taken. He then manages to get there on foot really quickly, even though he's still ill. And he then, through thick snow, just in time to get there after she's hacked this dude up, and they walk off. Oh man, I mean, it was more watchable than the last couple of weeks, but yeah, I really lost interest with this show. There's just been no momentum. So we barely see the creatures at all, and it's not all about that, but you just don't really feel there's any stakes, any tension, that anything's going to happen to these two characters, right? I mean, it's probably the first time that you really kind of see that they genuinely care about each other. The whole point is that, from the game, that she's kind of like a surrogate daughter to him, and obviously he's trying to get her to the Fireflies. And there's been no real demonstration of any kind of relationship between them, or it's a little there's been spots of it when they've sort of been joking, things like that, but this is probably the first time that and she runs, at the end when she runs into him and he holds her and and says, oh, it's going to be okay. It's really the only first time that you get that these two have a bit of a bond, and it's taken 8 episodes to get there. And even then, she's still not very likable. I wasn't really bothered whether she got chopped up in it or not, but for the sake of humanity, you're a bit like, well, I hope she doesn't, because she's the key to everything. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, so I think season finale next week. Really not that bothered what happens. The way the story's been going, it really looks like we're going to get The Last of Us Part 2. So whether Joel makes it through the season finale or they act out the beginning of The Last of Us Part 2 in the season finale, that's possible, because I think Bella Ramsey said it's going to be quite a controversial episode. But either way, I don't really care. It's such a disappointment, because for me, this show started really strong. I think it's been a bit Marmite for people, even at the beginning, but I really enjoyed the first few episodes and potential introducing the clickers. And I think episode 5, I think, has been the best one so far. So yeah, whatever, The Last of Us. Never mind. So we had a trailer drop this week. Oh man alive. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, I love this as a kid. I was probably a little bit old for it when it came out, but the 80s one. This lady here in the yellow jumpsuit, that was April O'Neil in the cartoon. back in the 80s, and yeah, and as we see, yet another ginger side has happened. April has bit the dust, as all these ginger characters do, and yeah. Oh, yeah, and she's been replaced by a short, dumpy person of color, which I think is immensely racist. To take, you're gonna swap her. She couldn't have been tall and slim and attractive. No, she has to be a slightly overweight, dumpy person of color, which I just think is just so wrong. It's just offensive to people of color, black people, especially black women, that they all have to be slightly dumpy and uncool. I mean, she's like a carbon copy of Velma. I mean, do we like we need two of those? So yeah, we've also got Splinter there with an afro. Nothing wrong with an afro. They're pretty cool to have a fro. But on a rat, why would a rat have an afro? And the other bombshell is now one of the turtles is a girl, obviously. Why we need any of these things, I don't know. But when it's Seth Rogen, are we even surprised? And he's just done all of this to bait people, to get people, so he can just, from the get-go, he can just go out and say we're all bigots and racists and all of that, because that's the only shtick he has, because he's so talentless. And again, it's the people of colour shield. If you criticize this, you're just racist. It's not because I have no talent and can't write. So yeah, I think people are pretty much getting the measure of, this has deliberately been done to wind people up. I'll just put that on so you can see that a bit better. Yeah, to poke the bear, call everybody racists. And then, I mean, I thought this was going on to streaming. It's actually being released in the cinemas. I cannot believe it. And when it bombs, and it's going to bomb, they can then blame all the audience that same old tropes over and over again. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this ends up getting some sort of dual release, but I don't know who's making it or whatever. I don't really care. But again, the trailer just looked awful. It was just cringe. It's like, I think people were really excited at a new turtle venture. The film's pretty decent. But I think you can't beat the original cartoon in the comics. But yeah, as soon as Seth's name was attached to this, it was just, we all groaned and realized, like, you know what we're going to get, and this is exactly what we've got. And I will be astounded if this thing's any good. The trailer just looked like a car crash. Poor old April, another ginger side, just be able to go out and be rude to your audience. What has the world come to? I know. Where creators just seem to go out of their way to want to provoke audiences, to be able to criticize and knock the audience and call them names. That seems to be all actually they want to do, rather than creating interesting entertainment for us. So yet another IP looks like is biting the dust. They won't be happy till all of our childhood IPs are gone, unfortunately. So rest in peace, Ninja Turtles. Let's hope it just disappears without a trace. And hopefully it will. Okay, let's move on to something good, something I want to talk about. So in my video, I think last week, I said that the part 2 of The Glory is releasing on Netflix. That dropped Friday. I don't know what day it is. It dropped on Friday. There was so much stuff released this week, and there's so many shows now, like their weekly episodes on a Friday. I've had so much TV to try and watch. And obviously, I was like busy yesterday. I was watching stuff on the tube, trying to keep on top of it all, to be able to come and bring you these reviews. So The Glory, yeah. So I'm probably about three or four episodes into the part 2. part one obviously ended with Moon's revenge plan being actioned, and she's kind of got all the pieces on the board. She teed everything up and how she was going to bring down the kids that basically tortured her, quite literally, when she's at school, and in her arch nemesis Park. And it ended with Park's husband arriving at Moon's flat, and his wife was already there looking at all these pictures on the walls of, this sort of stalker board. So because she wanted her Park to know that that she's been watching her, that she knows every aspect of her life, and they'd already had a couple of confrontations, and she'd already said, I'm coming for you. So there's a bit of an altercation between the Park and her husband, and the mask is well and truly slipping now for Park, and she talks to her husband with like kind of complete contempt, and she's really just not bothered that he even knows. And she walks out and leaves him. There's a camera obviously in the room, so Moon's watching all this happen, and she sees and notices that the husband takes his shoes off before he comes in, but obviously Park doesn't. She's got no respect, no courtesy whatsoever. And she's obviously got to know the husband through playing Go with him, and she quite, I think she quite likes, she thinks he's a decent man, and is feeling guilty that to get revenge on Park, she's sort of having to hurt him as well, because we know that what he thought was his daughter isn't his daughter. So she contacts Park to meet up, which goes to the studio where she works, and so let's get a coffee, and basically gives her one more chance to sort of, she's got these papers about her having to leave school, all detailed medical documents of all her injuries and photos, and says, right, if you come out and say this, you did all these things, and you kind of come clean, I'll call it all off now. I'll give you one last chance. And Park's just completely smug, like, yeah, what are you going to do? No one's going to believe you. She just got no remorse, nothing. She's a vile person. And she just screws up the papers and sort of basically tells Moon where to go. And Moon's like, fine. Your last chance that basically your husband got you is now off the table. Moon goes to the room and starts taking down all the photos and everything, and then she realizes there's a photo missing. That's a photo of her, the lady that was helping her, who she taught to drive, the domestic violence lady. And Park's basically got a picture of her husband. So then she's able to track her down and says, I know someone's helping Moon. But behind all of this, I mean, I think what was great is that these two have such a lovely relationship that, Moon forewarned her to say, I've screwed up. This picture's missing. She's probably going to come to you. When she does, come to me. And but so basically they to sort of let her, Park, believe that she's now working for her, and feeding information back. And there's some terrible scenes with obviously Park getting involved, and speaking to her husband, that he just beats the crap out of her. There's several scenes where he just goes in on her. It's absolutely awful. He's a vile, alcoholic, nasty piece of work. And Moon's like really cut up about this, because she knows that he could kill her. He's got no qualms about beating her to death. But she's able to sort of string him a line that she was sending some text messages for this rich woman, and this is where the money's come from, because he finds it in the house. And in part one, Moon has started working on being able to get her daughter abroad to America to study, to get her away from the father, because her mother's too afraid to leave, because he's basically just saying, he'll kill her and her daughter. So they sort of they put into action getting her daughter out of the country into America. She tries to go to the airport to see her off, but the husband knows something's up, and grabs hold of the bag she's carrying that's full of money, and again he starts beating her up, so she can't even get to say goodbye. And she writes her this lovely letter, and later on, so and she knows she's kind of got a foster family looking after her in America. So all this is starting to play out. We are finding out what happened to the girl before Moon. So the body that was in the morgue that's been there like 20 years, well, 15 or 17 years or something, because it was in dispute that she committed suicide. We know that Park or all of the gang are somehow involved. And she starts making phone calls, or she gets the tattoo guy to make the phone calls, and really none of them are that bothered. And Park especially, because he seems to say have no conscience whatsoever. So everything kind of kicks up a notch, and their lives basically sort of start to unravel. The father does find out that his wife's having an affair, and there's a good chance the daughter won't be there because the guy from the gang who is her father turned up a couple of times at the school now. And there's one of the teachers at the school, a bit of a pedo, he keeps taking photos of the girls, and Moon makes sure he finds out about this. So he goes to the school and makes a grab out this teacher as the dad turns up, and he confronts Park, like, would you like to explain why your lover turned up at our daughter's school and beat up her teacher? And it's the only time really you sort of see her face drop at all, in terms of that realization that she's been caught out. And he's like so angry, and he goes, I don't even know if I'm going to leave you right now. I can't even think straight. So her marriage is on the verge of imploding. I think she doesn't really care as long as she's still wealthy, and still has a career. She doesn't really seem to care much about her husband. It's all about status for her. So we're kind of getting to this where Park thinks she kind of has the upper hand, where Moon's still like one step ahead. What she does do, what Park manages to do, is track down Moon's mother, who's absolutely, never given a crap about her. Basically accepted money from Park's mother after it came out that she was beating her up, and basically sold her out. Then she's given a list by Park and starts ringing around all the parents of the class she teaches, drunk and just being abusive, and manages to get her fired. And Moon goes to see her, and she's just got bags full of all really expensive clothes and the money that Park's given her. So she just starts chopping it all up and ripping it up, and basically just says to her mother, like, just never, how could you do this? It's the one thing I had. And her mum just like, don't care. And she's like, basically, I'm never going to leave you alone. She keeps saying blood's thicker than water, and she'll just always just turn up and find out where she is, to make her miserable. Basically, her mother clearly has a dislike for her daughter. Her daughter actually loathes her mother, understandably. So we need to see how that's going to play out. Potentially the doctor, who she's kind of living with, she's in a tent in his lounge. Seeing how hurt she is, the whole piece around the inmate that killed his father, the director of the hospital. We haven't really gone back into that storyline much, but we saw him having these kind of fantasies where he was killing the guy that killed his father. So it's so very much a dark side to this doctor. So he's more than capable, I think, of doing something to her mother. But it's all starting to play out. It's really, really good start to part 2. I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait to see how this all ends up and plays out, and what happens to Park. I hope Park and her mother get the comeuppance they deserve, because Park is the actress that plays it is so good. She has this real sort of smirky, snarky face, and she's just really like always looking at people like she's got a bad smell under her nose. But absolutely, I mean, the writing, the acting is fantastic in this show. Quite often say an uncomfortable watch. Like you say, there's a lot of domestic violence. You see the attacks on the girl and other girls at the school, They do not shy away from this stuff in Korea. But it makes for a really, really good watch. So yeah, I'm pleased to say part 2 so far is equally as good as part 1. And I really can't wait to see how this show concludes. So yeah, so check out The Glory part 1, part 2 on Netflix now. Let me know what you think in the comments. Tell me if you're enjoying these K dramas or not your cup of tea. Moving on. Oh my God, the Marvels. So obviously, in the last couple of weeks, we talk about the spectacular bomb that is Ant-Man, and how Disney have pretty much put their full slate on hold. In terms of movies this year, I think Ant-Man's already dropped. We've got Guardians in May, and then this Monstrosity in November, and that's it. And we were supposed to get, I think, 5 TV shows. But really, the news around this is that what a surprise! People magnet Brie Larson isn't getting on with her co-star. Shocker. Is there anybody this woman gets on with is the question. And she seems to be like just one of the most unlikable, disagreeable people in Hollywood right now. So there's lots of stories going around that, she's pissed because it's called The Marvels and not Captain Marvels 2. She's an Oscar-winning actress, don't you know? Who clearly thinks she's better than everybody else, and deserves a higher status, as we say, been banging heads with her co-star, the lady that plays Monica Rambeau, who was introduced in WandaVision. And there's quite a lot of friction on set. I mean, again, the film's been pushed back to November. This is the 5th time the release date has been moved. More reshoots happening, as the screenings were just so bad. I just don't think there's anything that can save this this film. From the moment it was conceived and we found out that Monica Rambeau and Miss Marvel were going to be in it, we just knew it was going to be a turd. There's nothing good about this film. Nobody liked Captain Marvel. A film only done well because it was sandwiched between Infinity War and Endgame. Everybody knows that now. So, but yeah, increasing frictions. I think, based on what we're hearing and the likelihood of this thing tanking, yeah, hopefully that'll be the last we see of Brie. To think that this woman was meant to replace Robert Downey is just mind-boggling. But what thinking they had there, or lack thereof thinking, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, just the more you hear, coming out at Disney, Marvel, and Disney, Lucasfilm, and they are in a bad way. With this Peter and Wendy, getting ratioed into oblivion. We know the Little Mermaid's coming out, which has been ratioed into oblivion. The only things they're likely to make any decent amount of money on is Guardians 3, and Secret Invasion may do well, but I don't think you're going to get people signing up in their millions to Disney Plus to watch Secret Invasion, even though it is Samuel. So yeah, couldn't happen to nicer people, could it? Reap what you sow, Disney. Reap what you sow. But yeah, I just found it really funny that yet again, Brie Larson cannot get on with her co-stars. Shocker. Dear oh Lord. So moving on. Yes, so of course, Friday means only one thing. Yes, Picard. So there's as always, I dropped my Picard review on Friday, a little bit later than normal, but yeah, this episode was so good. On average, my sort of reaction videos have kind of been about 20-25 minutes. This was 40 minutes, just gushing about this episode. There was some stuff in there I didn't like, as I don't think swearing fits in the Star Trek world. I really, that's not how the the show was sort of set up, and it's very clearly sort of said in the Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, around they don't use profanity anymore. It's a very 21st century concept. But there was F-bombs and dipshits and all kinds in this episode, and references to pot, which I'm pretty sure like there'll be new and more wonderful artificial drugs, recreational drugs in the 25th century that people would even know or speak about pot. But that was my only complaints. As for the rest of it, it was fantastic. You had great scenes with Riker and Picard after their altercation on the bridge in the previous episode. And Riker apologizes Picard goes to apologize to Will. Will's like, no, it's me. I should have listened to you, and the ship is dead in the water. They're basically all just sort of sitting there thinking, take care of your affairs. And Will sort of said to Picard, go spend time with your son, get to know him, what little time we've got left. So everybody's sort of preparing to die. And just the interaction and Riker talking about losing his son and the funeral, and why he's kind of got this cloud over him. He just can't feel anything anymore. Everything's just very dark. After everything he's seen, all the wonderful things that they've done, there isn't anything out there that makes him believe that there's anything more, that there's an afterlife effectively. And he's just been in this really bad place where he just can't feel anything. And that's part of the reason why he was so quick to join Picard on this venture, getting away from his family, just thinking that would help. There's another scene where Riker tries to leave Deanna a message, and he just can't bring himself to say what he needs to say, or he can't even figure out what to say to her because he's just closed emotionally. And we get some fantastic scenes between Picard in 10 Forward and Jack, and them getting to know each other. And there's a great little interaction, which is in my review video, which I just love it, with Jack sort of saying, Picard, can we talk about the elephant in the room? And Picard's like, God, here it comes. He just asked him about when did he lose his hair, what age did he lose his hair. And Picard's just like, well, make the most of it, dude, because you ain't got it for much longer. So but yeah, there was some great scenes, and we got flashbacks to the actual 10 Forward, sort of 5 years ago. A group of cadets come up to Admiral Picard. He's eating his lunch, and they're sort of asking him questions, and he's telling them stories. And there's sort of stories about the no-win scenario, and the what sort of situations has he been in, which is obviously relevant to what we're seeing now. But it's basically all a vehicle that we find out that Jack did in fact seek out Picard, and he asked him a question. You talk about your Starfleet family. What about a real family? Is there anything outside of Starfleet? And Picard makes a comment that, Starfleet is the only family I ever needed. And Jack hears this and leaves. And based on that answer, he never got in contact with Picard again, which I think is pretty harsh. Asking somebody something in a public place surrounded by Starfleet cadets. How honest are you going to be? Or I think it's his honest answer, but there's nuance in everything, and certainly you find that if you've got a child, you would probably answer that quite differently. But at the time, that's what he said, and that was enough for Jack not to get to know him. And right at the end of the episode, you kind of see this flashback, and the way it's shot, you kind of realize that Picard remembers this and realizes it was Jack that asked him the question. And one of the best bits, Captain Shaw is absolutely brilliant in this episode. The actor who plays him is fantastic. He's just so dry and sardonic, and there's some great bits where he's talking to Seven about they discover there's changelings on board, But he goes to 10 forward. He's a little bit off his nut on painkillers, obviously where he got injured in the previous episode, and he interrupts kind of Jack and Picard talking, and he says, "Oh, does your father, has he told you about the time we first met?" And he goes on to say he was on a ship, the Constance, USS Constance, and he was an engineer. He goes, "I was just a lonely grease monkey back then." And he fought in the war with the Borg, obviously, when Picard was captured and became the Locutus and pretty much wiped out most of Starfleet. And Shaw was on one of these ships, and the ship was badly damaged. About 50 of the crew had managed to get to an escape, or down to a shuttle to escape, but there's only 10 seats. And a lieutenant basically comes down, picks 10 people. Shaw was the 10th person and just goes like, you, and they got away. So we learn that the reason, Shaw's being pretty much an arse, and he's been pretty much a dick the whole way through. But he's suffering from survivor's guilt and PTSD and these kind of things. So it's another layer to Shaw's character, and this is what I'm loving about this show so much. Is that these characters are proper fleshed out. They're like written as real human beings, with human flaws, and he's not a dick just for the sake of being a dick. He has his own scars and psychological issues, and at the end of this sort of speech or this story, you can see like Picard is just like crestfallen. He's just sort of like, he's had to live with all these years of those deaths on his hands, even though it wasn't his fault because he was assimilated. He's had to live with this, and going back to Deep Space Nine, we had Cisco, had a similar run-in with him because Cisco lost his wife during the battle. So you just sort of see Picard go, no, it's okay, because Jack was like, that's enough. I mean, geez. And Picard's like, no, it's okay. And he just gets up and walks out, and Jack goes after him, but Picard just like completely just shut down. He's like, and Jack was like, you okay? Like, you don't have to explain yourself to me. And Picard's just like, he's like, no, it's fine. That was really helpful. Thank you for your time. But at this point, Beverly catches up with them. She's worked out that these electrical waves, because they're like bio power waves, are actually contractions, and the nebula isn't actually a nebula. They're actually kind of in some sort of womb. And they figure out between them, which again is proper classic Star Trek, which I love. That and there's a couple of times both Riker and Picard in the flashbacks talk about, you're only as good as your team, and you play to your team's strengths, and together, if you all work together, you can get out of any situation, kind of thing. So you've kind of got Jack and Beverly and Picard and Riker all trying to figure out, they like, Jack thinks, oh, I think we can harness this power and we can basically jumpstart the ship and we can ride out on a wave and all this kind of stuff. And Riker initially is like, are you insane? This plan is bonkers. Like, no way. We're just, condemning the crew to death, and Picard's like, well, we're going to die anyway. But he's like, well, I'm not sort of, forced the situation. And Beverly says to him, look, if Deanna was here, she'd say this is all about trust and believing in ourselves and doing what we do best, and Picard follows up saying the same, look, if this is our last hurrah, let's face it together and go out being our best. And this kind of gives Riker a bit of a kick up the arse, because like I say, he's in this very dark place. He's just very much risk averse and just very worried about his own mortality or the mortality of the people, the crew. But this kind of kicks him up the butt and is like, no, they're right. You have to carry on fighting. You just don't roll over and die, kind of thing. So they come up with a plan. Obviously, the plan works, and they manage to get out of this. And this nebula gives birth to all these space jellyfish. And this enables sort of Riker to have some kind of epiphany or sort of reflection. And yeah, there is good stuff out there, and again, it's a new life, it's a new life form, and they go back to, you know, discovering new life and civilizations, and you know, that was their original mission. And like, almost to him, like, I don't know everything, I haven't seen everything, I've been out there, but I still don't know everything, and there's still beautiful things and hopeful things happening. And he has a, you know, he video messages Deanna, they're having a conversation, and he's like apologizing to her and explains what's happened, and he's going to try and fix things. So we've always kind of like got this conclusion to this initial part. This is like part one of the 1 to 4. We're going to part 2, obviously, in the next couple of episodes, which are rumored to be absolute bangers. So I cannot wait for what's coming up next. But do go check out my full review, obviously very much Clip Notes version. There's a lot more going on in this episode, and I go into a lot more detail about what I like and what I didn't like about this episode. So go check that out. But this show is just getting better and better. This was a pure TNG episode. I say in my review, it's TNG 101. The crew working together, you know, fixing things, problem solving, using real science. I know, who'd have thought it in a new Trek show that one person isn't the answer to everything. You can do stuff without crying, and you can use real science. Wow. To get yourselves out of a situation. Terry Matalas is just absolutely slam dunk in this, with the performances, with the great writing that he's given them. I am loving the show. Can't wait, cannot wait for next week's episode, hearing some really, really good stuff about it. So exciting. It's so nice to have TV that you're looking forward to watching. As I said at the start of the show, The Last of Us. Oh, I literally watched it this morning. I've been putting it off, going, oh God, I don't really want to watch this. But, you know, penultimate episode. And say, for a penultimate episode, it was pretty bland. But anyway, yeah, so I just kind of wanted to, I think, talk about, and I think this is just so ironic. Chris Rock, selective outrage. I watched this last Sunday. I didn't get to see it live. I don't know what time it aired in the States, but basically watched it after I heard a few things on the older Twitter. And actually I found it pretty funny. He came out all guns blazing and fair play to Chris Rock. And there's a lot of M-bombs in there. A lot. So if you're easily offended, this is really not the stand up for you. I personally found it very funny. And yeah, he just went in. He just went in on woke. He went in on Megan and Harry. Oh my days. He and most notably, or most infamously now, obviously he was commenting on the Oscar slap and Will and Jada. And he pulled no punches at all. No F's given by Mr. Chris Rock. And yeah, and the whole thing, like selective outrage, and say when he's talking about woke culture, and he's like, hey, you know, how he's outraged all the time about everything, but it is selective. And he made a comment about how, you know, one person says or does something and gets cancelled, but then somebody else says it and they don't. And he goes, he just goes, you know what I'm talking about. You know what's going on here. So without sort of saying it, but he's basically saying, you know, depending on what side of the political aisle you're on, you'll get cancelled or you won't get cancelled, dependingly. And I just think the fact that it's called selective outrage, and he's obviously, you know, commenting on the woke culture, that there's not really been a massive backlash on this. And I thought, you know, I'll be able to hear the rees in the UK coming across the pond from America on this show, and the things he was saying. I think most people actually are kind of supported what he's been saying, especially around the Will Smith stuff. I mean, Took his time. It's taken him a year, but boy, did he win that one. And he was talking about, why didn't he react at the time, or why didn't he say, and he just like, I was brought up properly. My mum was there. I'm not going to embarrass myself in front of my mum, hitting this dude back. And he's saying, like, have you seen the size of this guy? He like towers over me, because I'm just a little guy, keep myself in shape, but damn. Absolutely brilliant. And then the whole going in on Meghan and the racism thing, and he just like, she just does not stop complaining. Some of the stuff she's complaining about has nothing to do with color. That's just having in-laws. And it's actually sort of tougher for a white woman to go to or be with a black man and meet their family than the other way around. It doesn't matter how long that woman's with that guy, she's never accepted, kind of thing. And again, I think only a black person or person of color could get away with saying these things. But again, selective outrage. If one person says it, it's fine. But no, it was very funny. Good observational humor, and just talking about just basically saying the whole world's insane. We are living in clown world is basically what he was saying, and he ain't wrong. He is not wrong at all. So yeah. So if you're not easily offended, you don't mind the M-bombs, go check out Selective Outrage on Netflix, certainly before they pull it or heavily edit it. I think there was some editing done because he fluffed one of the jokes around Will Smith, and they've kind of corrected it so it actually comes across right. And it's because there's a bit where it goes, that's not right. So I did read something that they've sorted that out, which is fine. But yeah, good watch. Yeah, so some of it I was a bit like, okay. But there's a lot of very funny stuff in there, and a lot of truth bombs. And I'd be very, very embarrassed if I was Will Smith right now, and Jada. I mean, the things he says about Jada and her banging her son's friend is like, woof. He is not pulling any punches there. And apparently, like, Jada's come out and just says that Chris is just, obsessed by me. And I'm like, don't think he is, love, but that's just a typical narcissist talking, isn't it? Because of course it's all about them. Why wouldn't it be? So anyway, that's my kind of week in entertainment. Yes, I have had the opportunity to watch Luther, Fallen Sun, but I will give you the review on that next week. So it's a fair bit to get through this week, and it's a 2-hour film. So I will cover that next week, let you know what I thought about that. And oh yeah, Mando, yeah, I watched episode 2. Was better than last week's. But all that happened really, in probably about a minute, I'll tell you what happened in the episode. So Mando goes to the junk repair woman, can't remember her name, gets R5, the red droid, because we know there's only like 3 or 4 droids in the Star Wars universe. R2-D2, R5, C-3PO, and RG-11, whatever his name is. There doesn't seem to be any other droids. But anyway, by the way, goes and gets him. So he can go to Mandalore, check that the atmosphere is fine, which is what he wanted the other robot for. So it just proved the whole last week was just like not needed at all. As we all said, just get another robot. And he did. So he then goes to Mandalore. Yep, yeah, it's fine. Lo and behold, him and Grogu go inside to try and find the mines so he can find the water to cleanse himself. Loads of weird reptile space dwelling creatures living in robotic suits, snares, captures Mando. Grogu gets away using the Force, gets back in the ship R5 flies them to Katie Sackhoff, what her name is. She then goes back with Grogu, rescues Mando, shows him down to the mines in the water. He starts doing his speech to cleanse himself, gets dragged underwater by another beast. How about that? These episodes are just so short that they don't even really kind of get going. And it hasn't really pushed the story forward. I mean, technically, he's been in the waters, so when he comes out again, I guess he's back to being a Mandalorian. Katie Sackhoff got to wield the Darksaber again because that's what she's been sulking about since the last season, from what I can gather. So yeah, I mean, it was better. It was more watchable than last week's, but nothing of real substance seems to be happening at the moment. I think the episodes just seem too short to really kind of hook you in. But hey ho, see what happens on Wednesday, I guess. Right, so that is it this time. So catch you next week, hopefully with a live show. I will be firing on all cylinders, she says. So do leave me some comments. What do you think about all these shows? Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm talking nonsense? Probably. But yeah, do let me know what you think. And really important, do like, share, and subscribe. It's, you know, the interactions all help the algorithm and help get me out there. Subject me on the rest of the world. But anyway, yeah, can't wait to interact with you next week. Yeah, we're hoping I'm making more sense, and yeah, don't look like I need about another 12 hours sleep. So have a great week. I will see you at some point, either on this Facebook or here on this channel, Atomic Blonde LDN. So have a good one. See you soon. Bye-bye.